All right, hi and welcome to Fika Snack about the future of education. And today we're having a talk or we're having a little Fika and we're going to have this session in English. And today I have Bruce here. Please present yourself maybe.
Sure. So I'm Bruce McLaren. I'm a professor at Carnegie Mellon University in the United States. I've been doing research in the area of educational technology for over 20 years. Some of that research has been what's called intelligent tutoring systems, some is collaborative learning, but the research I've been most recently excited about and have done a lot of work with is digital learning games.
Nice. And then Elias, present yourself as well.
Yes, I'm Elias. I'm a very newly employed PhD student here at KTH, working particularly with reading tutors, trying to get children to learn to read better and quicker in many different ways.
And then, of course, Joakim, do a presentation of yourself as well.
Joakim Lilliesköld, one of the program leaders in the Future Education Change Program.
Excellent. And I'm Marcus Lithander, also a researcher in cognitive psychology background. So maybe we get into a little bit of cognitive psychology in today's talk. Bruce, is this your first Swedish Fika?
No, it isn't. I was here about 6 months ago, and that's when I was first introduced to the Fika. We Olga Viberg, professor here at the university, and I visited a local company called Furhat. Robotics. Do you know Furhat?
Yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah. So I know the guy who founded the company, and anyway, he introduced us to it. We sat down and we had a nice Fika, spent a couple of hours talking together. So that was my first introduction. Nice. Yeah. This is the second time.
Nice. Welcome to the Fika culture and welcome to Sweden.
Okay, thank you very much.
And today I listened to a talk by you, and you talked a little bit about game-based learning from childhood to adult learning. Mm-hmm. Maybe if we start off, what is your definition? What is game-based learning?
Okay, so game-based learning is essentially where you are presented with some kind of challenge or something that makes the person who's playing curious. And it has different kinds of mechanics in it that are very specific to how games are played. Mm-hmm. And it's usually developed from the ground up as a game. Mm-hmm. So in other words, you go into it knowing that you're going to build this game and it's going to be for learning. You have to be concerned about sort of bringing together sort of the game side of it, the fun side of it, but also on the other side, the instructional side of it. So that's game-based learning, and that's differentiated from gamification, which overlaps, and that is that with gamification, you have some other kind of technology originally, and what you do is you add to it game aspects. So, for instance, you might have a leaderboard, or you might provide badges or some kinds of rewards for solving things in the environment of that educational technology. So, those are game aspects, but you maybe didn't originally design it as a game. But I think we've learned that those, game aspects help motivate people to learn in both cases, either in the gamification case or in the case where you build something from the ground up as a game.
And then a follow-up question here, we say it motivates learner, but is motivation, does it always lead to more learning?
It doesn't. It doesn't always lead to more learning, because one of the dangers, I talked about this in the talk that I gave earlier today, is that with a game, you could design it so that it's so exciting and thrilling to the player that they're losing sight of the content in the game. So you really have to find this sort of balance between the game aspects and the engaging aspects and the instructional content. So it's not always the case. You have to find sort of the happy medium between instructional content and game content.
Yeah, I think that was interesting. In your talk, you also said sometimes we actually learn better when we are struggling a little bit with the material. We are processing the material, elaborating with the material, and so on. So
Right.
it's kind of motivating, but motivating to kind of do something that is struggling. Am I understanding it correctly?
Yes, yes. And there are different kinds of struggles, right? Because you can have struggles in games too, right? Like you're trying to go up different levels and that's one kind of struggle. But there could be a struggle when you're trying to solve a math problem and you don't understand all the concepts. That's a different kind of struggle. The ideal would be that you create the struggle so that the student, is really putting themselves to the task, but that maybe you make it a little more fun. And so they're motivated to stay with it.
And Elias, have you worked? Tell us a little bit more about your research. I know you mentioned that sometimes the students feel that you have gamified some of the research, or it wasn't your own research. Tell me again.
Yes, basically my work is largely listening to children speak or read rather, and being able to give feedback on that. And then also in the full system, you also have some sort of inferential task where they are supposed to answer questions about what they just read. So then we had a previous study which did co-design and user testing and such. And then we found that a lot of the children found exactly that when they at the end got a sort of score and a bit of general feedback at the end, which is like 3 out of 5 stars. They felt that they had lost to the AI that was giving them feedback and such, which is we talked about a bit earlier, that this personification perhaps also of the AI is at play there. The children actually believe that AI is a person that they can lose to.
It feels like a person. You are losing to, and you are always maybe competing against the AI or something.
Yeah, or something like that. Yeah.
That's interesting. And I guess kids are also used to getting this type of feedback. So they are feeling like, oh, this is a reward. I should get a better reward or something like that.
Yeah, right.
And that's interesting. You mentioned AI as well, because Bruce, you mentioned you had a table with potentials and pitfalls with game-based learning. And for me, that's very much related to kind of the pitfalls and promises of AI today. You want to briefly talk about the table?
Yeah, sure. So the general idea is that there are these trade-offs, and I find this table, which Richard Mayer and one of his students put this together. Richard Mayer is a very famous educational psychologist who's worked a lot with games, and designed this table that shows kind of those trade-offs between when you motivate a student, you could provide too much motivation, which would mean they're like over excited and they're not really concentrating on the content, or it could be under motivated. So you have to try to find just the right amount of sort of fun and motivation that you provide so that they can also be open to the content that they're trying to learn. On the other hand, which is what the table showed, is that you can provide instruction that could be maybe boring if it's just instruction by itself, like you just put a problem on a screen, solve this. That if you did that a lot, that would be maybe not very interesting and exciting to a student, and they might not concentrate. So it's really finding that middle ground between the engaging, exciting part of a game and the right kind of instruction.
Oh, that's interesting. Is this something you have noticed? Or I know you have been using AI a little bit. Do you use it as a simple tool, or do you make the AI challenge yourself?
Well, I would say make it challenge yourself. That's when it's fun.
That's
I would say.
interesting. Yeah. And one way of, you mentioned that you used self-explanation as kind of a prompt to the users. Maybe you want to talk about, is this a way of challenging the students in this?
Yeah, and that's taken from general learning science, not particularly from games. One of the things I've tried to do in my line of research with games is I've tried to take learning science principles, and self-explanation is one of those, and apply those in a game context to see the impact. It had already been shown in many other contexts, not even having to do with digital learning, but just, people doing paper tests and then being asked to self-explain that it's a benefit. And it's one of the most robust principles in learning science. And what we wanted to do is bring it into the game context to see if it would also work in the game context. And in fact, we found that it did. We were a little nervous because, asking somebody, okay, explain what you just did, maybe runs a little bit counter to how games operate. Games are typically, maybe fast moving, and you're not asking for, explanations or words to be given. So it's possible that you could depress learning by, and it goes back to the table that you were asking about. You could be depressing learning, and we wanted to find out, well, would it do that or not? And in fact, we found out that the way that we're employing it is kind of, I would say, a lightweight self-explanation where they are asked to self-explain, but they don't have to generate the self-explanation. They're given options. It's like a multiple choice list.
But so it's multiple choice.
Right. And we have explored other approaches that have been successful, but that one seems to be the best balance, and it also leads to learning benefits to have them use these multiple choice self-explanations, which they answer after they, take challenges on in the game and solve problems in the game. They're asked to self-explain. It's very quick, as we know, doing a self-explanation question is pretty quick and easy to do.
But have you tried it like in free text, like asking if you would explain now how you managed this to your best friend? How would you tell them what you did?
Yes, we have done that. And in fact, in one study, we did find that it led to better learning outcomes, and it was just as engaging. So we were a little surprised by that output that finding, because we suspected that they would prefer and maybe be more motivated by just these short, quick answers. But there's also, of course, learning theories that support the idea of struggle. And, having to type something in as an answer is a little more struggle than, as we know from, all of us taking tests. It's a lot harder to actually generate words in a sentence than it is to just pick an option. So we did have one study where the open-ended self-explanation led to a better outcome for students.
But also the thing that when you explain to others, you kind of get to really know the subject. So when you challenge to your best friend rather than getting it back to the game, maybe could be interesting.
And I think we've learned this anecdotally as teachers,
exactly.
Right? When you teach something, you may go into a subject and you don't know the topic so well, but you have to learn it. And you have to explain it to other people. Suddenly you become an expert because you're having to speak out loud to explain content. So it's definitely a connected phenomenon for sure.
Yeah, Elias, you and I, we talked a little bit about this after your talk, and we said, like, usually when you use AI, what you're doing is you're getting a lot of explanations. You're just getting the information, and maybe you get kind of a feeling that you know the material, but rarely you are actually prompted to explain the material yourself or getting quiz questions about it. And maybe that's actually what research, I would say, shows that you should do. Like, have the AI like prompt me or ask me questions, or you should explain it to the AI. But maybe that's a pitfall or a risk with using it.
Well, I think that is one of the risks of using AI that we're seeing, is that if there's too much reliance on AI for the answers, and then people think, okay, well, I'll get it from AI and then I'll just read it and then I'll know it. Not quite. You really need to test yourself a little bit and
yeah,
push yourself a little bit, answering questions to really make sure that you understand.
On that topic, I have actually used AI in exactly that way, asking it to quiz me and trying to explain something and asking it to correct me on it and such. It's not that it's impossible, but quite often you have to fight it because it's so pre-prompted and trained to produce an artifact to create the explanation that is the general purpose of the machine, basically. But it is not impossible.
So a friend of me told me it should be like going to the gym. It should not lift the weights for you. This is what it's trying to do all the time. I can help you, but actually what you want is more of an instructor telling you you need to work harder on this part here. You are lagging a bit behind here or something like that.
That's a great metaphor. I think I'm going to use that. Thank you.
And we started to talk a little bit like self-explanation. Maybe that is one of the principles that you can kind of include if you are creating this game-based learning. Are there more kind of these principal features that you often try to include? I mean, scaffolding, maybe?
Yeah, so another feature that we experimented with and got kind of surprising findings is we provided hints that the student could access, as well as feedback when they made mistakes that told them, you got this wrong and here's why. Okay. And what we found is that, the stronger students didn't really use the hints and feedback because they knew the content. The weaker students started to rely on it too much. And so they were at the gym, but not really lifting the weights. So, see, I'm already using your metaphor.
Excellent.
But we did find that, the students didn't learn as well. They did no better. They didn't do worse, significantly worse, but they did no better in the condition that had the hints and the feedback. And then we had another condition where they didn't get hints and feedback. And we hypothesized in that study that the students that had access to the hints and the feedback, they're going to do better because when they're stuck, they can use this tool. But no, that was not the case. It was the case that the students who had to struggle a little bit more and didn't get the easy answers had to go to the gym themselves and lift those weights. They didn't do better, but the ones that had the hints that you might have thought would do better did not. They were pretty much the same.
Could this be related to kind of that you learn the mechanism for the game and you are trying to kind of go around it? I feel I do the same when I play like Duolingo. I know I want to keep up my streak. But I know there's a fast way of doing it. I only do this easy task and I keep the streak and so on.
I do that too. I'm learning Spanish and I do the same thing. Not too often. But yeah, I think it is a little bit related to that. In fact, I've done some work, another principle of learning science, which is kind of a common sense principle is learning from worked examples. Okay, so let's say you have a math task or a science task. It usually helps most students to see an example before they try to solve a problem first. Now, there has been some research that's been the other way around where let the student struggle, try to solve the problem first. Kind of depends on the student. Some students might get, frustrated, in the case where they don't have any scaffolding to start with. But what we found is that in some studies that the hints that the students are getting, and typically there's a high level hint, a second hint that gets a little closer to the answer, and then there's what we call the bottom out hint, which basically gives them the answer. And like you say, if you figure that out, you can just go click, click, click. Oh, there's the answer. Just like your Duolingo example. So you can sort of game through and just get the answer. And for some students, that's helpful because it provides, the reason I referred to worked examples, is that can provide a worked example for them. If they really don't know what they're doing, it's helpful to get the answer straight away. But if they just don't want to engage, it's not helpful.
Oh.
So there's kind of a
That's interesting.
balance
Yeah, yeah,
there.
yeah.
So it's not, it depends on where a student is in their progress, I would say, as to whether or not. Usually beginning students, you want to give them worked examples.
Yeah. It just feels a lot of now I'm related like parents do with their kids, right? You're like, no, you have to solve it yourself, but please, mom, help. But you don't want to help them all the time because then they can't solve whatever problem there is themselves. You want to help them just like enough so that now I taught you how to do it, so now I want you to practice it by yourself. Something like that. Interesting. Is there anything? So now we talked a little bit about this principles of learning. Is it something that you think that we can transfer to game-based learning, but maybe teachers here at KTH that they can include or incorporate in their daily teaching or learning management systems from game-based learning?
Yeah, well, the talk that I gave, which was about game-based learning from the children's age, middle school age kids, which is where I do most of my research, to adults. I've done most of my work, as I say, with middle school kids. So I don't have a lot of experience with how games work with adults, but I did kind of a deep dive for the talk that I gave earlier about adult game-based learning. Most of the games have been used in more like work settings, as I mentioned. That is being given games to challenge. Let's say you're an emergency technician on an ambulance. You could set up a game where it's like, okay, there's a crisis. There's somebody who's been hurt badly, and you need to try to save them, and you could set that up kind of as a game, as something, and but that's a work environment. I didn't run across as much of the game-based learning that would be, let's say, for more advanced topics in education. So let's say learning calculus or something that you might learn as an advanced student in college. So there's kind of less in that space. So more of the game-based learning that's for adult learners is really more workplace oriented, I would say. But maybe that's an opportunity. Maybe there's more opportunity to develop kind of games that would be helpful to college-age students as they're tackling different subjects.
How would you say in general that game-based learning differentiates from adults to kids and K-12 level?
Yeah, the fundamental difference is that with game-based learning for kids, you're more typically trying to teach some basic skill. So the game that my lab has developed is for kids learning about decimals, decimal operations, and so on. And with game-based learning for adults, you're more often trying to situate, like the example I just gave with the emergency technicians, where you kind of situate almost like a simulation to help them in their work environment. So it's more like a complex problem-solving domain to help them learn something valuable for their work that they do, versus, I would say, more fundamental skills that you have in game-based learning for kids. So that's a real distinction between kids learning with games and adults.
But you talked a little bit about VR coming in also into this world. And one of the challenges in universities is that the engineering students coming here has much less knowledge about the engineering domain. They haven't done the practice, they haven't been out in industry, etc. So is that the new way of teaching the context of what we're doing? Maybe the gamification, being in a paper mill, trying to solve a situation, understanding them more, or is it?
Yeah. I think there's, especially recently, there's been a huge movement towards developing virtual reality applications where you're presented with, like, you're in the context of working in a factory or something, and that's what you're seeing. And then you have to make actions within that environment to help you learn. about what's the right thing to do and to get feedback. So in some sense, that's not even really game-based learning. It's kind of more simulation.
Yeah.
But it is, it overlaps, I would say,
Yeah.
with game-based learning. But there has been a big movement towards that as a tool. One of the downsides of the virtual reality is the cost.
Yeah.
To actually buy the technology and to disperse it widely with people, it can be costly. There's more sort of actual technology.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're just using a computer or a phone, everybody has those now. So if that's where you're delivering for game-based learning, it's much easier to deliver that.
Yeah.
It's not specialized technology.
No.
So,
And as you mentioned, it must be extra valuable in areas where there's a lot of risks with doing an erroneous behavior. I mean, flight simulator, if you do an error in a real airplane, it's
right. Or health applications where let's say you're learning to do surgery. Right. You can imagine, you can have a virtual reality where you're cutting open a patient, and you don't really want to do that on a real patient. Of course, now I think what a lot of happens in medical education is they use cadavers to do that kind of thing. But even that's expensive because then you have to have the body of a person to do that. So, but if you can do it in virtual reality, it's much cheaper, it's easier, it's repeatable. So that is also a huge benefit.
And it's scalable on another level because you can scale it worldwide.
Yes, exactly. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it was on Karolinska in their medical. They did surgery and they transformed like a normal office space. So then you could have just a patient laying down on the table virtually, and they could try to do surgery. I don't know though if there is a good transfer or if you lose something in between. But usually these kind of simulation learning is very good because they're so context based.
Yeah, and they're getting better and better. So it's the fidelity is very high to reality. That's not to say that when you get in a real situation, it might be different. It's definitely what because you're aware that this is simulation versus wow, this is a real person that I'm doing this to. So
But again, it's bringing it back to creating the engagement of a game and designing it that way. You want to go back. You want to do. Would be interesting to explore more. And you can imagine making it into a game. So maybe it's really important, if you're doing some kind of a surgical procedure, to finish in a certain amount of time. So you could imagine a clock, and you're losing points as it takes you more and more time. So you could learn to be faster and faster at the task. Or standardize that it takes the same time, because that means you can plan the operations. If you can maybe faster is one thing, but you also don't want a big variance between the patients.
Right, consistency in how you do the task. Right.
So that's a gamification thing that you should score and make 10 operations same with very little variation. And,
exactly.
And the patient should survive.
We hope.
Yeah, that's interesting, and maybe something we can implement in engineering education as well.
Yeah, I think
because
a lot of, in a lot of dangerous processes, chemical processes or expensive, like I said, pulp and paper. To understand, go into the factory. There's a lot of things you could do to understand the system that you are developing. And I think there's an enormous potential. And again, once you've done it for one place in the world, you could basically scale it for all engineering students in the same domain. And it could be a game to actually go in back, get more points. And maybe you have to do that before you do a lab or take on a project. And then, so we have the knowledge.
I think it's very similar. And the cost effectiveness of doing it through virtual reality and in a game is great, and you can scale it as well.
And then you can also have much easier to understand the theories that you're going to use and why you use it later on.
Right.
So,
Right.
Okay, maybe we should round up. Maybe could we find if we want to 3 takeaways for students, maybe to gamify their learning or use game-based learning? Is there something that students, engineering students, should think of? Like, oh, this, when you are opening AI or whatever it is it something, some principles?
A key one, I think, which is how I got really interested in game-based learning to begin with, is that I wanted real proof. I mentioned again during the talk that I gave that, my interest was sparked by the fact that I would be in middle school classrooms and kids were being told, oh yeah, jump on this Math Blaster game after you've finished your other work. And I was curious, I wonder if that's really helping them or if they're just having fun and doing something on the side. So I wouldn't, as a scientist, I think it's important to be skeptical and to think about how something really is there real evidence of whether something works. So I think if you're given like a tool that's very appealing to you, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be effective and it's going to be valuable. So I think it's important to be a skeptic. I think that's probably true in any science, but particularly I think in this area where people can get carried away with their own, let's say, anecdotal excitement.
And there is a lot of exciting things going on, which is good, but we need to stay skeptical as well.
Right.
Excellent.
And for a teacher, what is there any advice you would give to a teacher who want to explore more game-based?
For a teacher, well, I mean, I would turn off a little bit of the noise that's coming on from the popular press, which I found. I don't know how it is here in Sweden, but in the United States, and I think it's news in general, there's always the doomsday, scenario that's given, like, oh my gosh, AI is coming, and it's going to destroy us all. And I'm not going to be totally the opposite either and say, oh, it's all fantastic. But I think if you're sort of objective and you look for the positives and the things that you can do, like a lot of teachers are using AI, for instance, to help them build their lesson plans, for instance. And, using it, like if you're unsure, I mean, teacher doesn't know everything. So use AI to help you when you yourself don't know something. So don't, I think, immediately come to the conclusion that this is a bad thing. Use it for the good. And there are many goods, I think.
Because I think, you get challenged as a teacher, maybe with new technology, and then game-based learning could be a very interesting way to develop the course that you have. And like you said, it's not that much done on university level, so it could be a very interesting route to go down.
Yeah, it could be. It could be. If you're a researcher who's interested in that area, as I said earlier, I think it's one space that hasn't been explored a lot. For a research topic, I think it's a good one.
You're in the right field, Elias.
Hopefully.
Excellent. Thank you all for watching and listening, and we will be back in 2 weeks or so. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.